Hello everyone. In today's video, we'll be discussing evolution chapter from biology class 12th, and it's going to be like an audiobook along with the NCERT highlights. So, say nowadays, since the competitive exams are all about NCERT. So, without further ado, let's just get started. Evolutionary biology is the study of life forms on Earth. What exactly is evolution? To understand the changes in flora and fauna that have occurred over millions of years on Earth, we must have an understanding of the context of origin of life, that is, evolution of Earth, of stars, and indeed of the universe itself. What follows is the longest of all the construed and conjectured stories. This is the story of origin of life and evolution of life forms on or biodiversity on planet Earth in the context of evolution of Earth and against the background of evolution of universe itself. Basically, there's a very introductory paragraph which is trying to explain the origin of life in a way that there are various theories put forward by different scientists in different ages and different eras, and we'll be going through all of those in this lesson. Moving on, origin of life. When we look at the stars on a clear night sky, we are in a way looking back in time. Stellar distances are measured in light years. What we see today is an object whose emitted light started its journey millions of years back and from trillions of kilometers away and reaching our eyes now. However, when we see objects in our immediate surroundings, we see them instantly and hence in the present time. Therefore, when we see stars, we apparently are peeping into the past. It's just giving you an idea, taking you back into the past. And I think we know this from physics point of view as well, that whenever we look at the stars, and we know that it's not actually the stars are not twinkling, but we know that the light has been emitted millions of years back and now it's reaching us. The origin of life is considered a unique event in the history of universe. We know obviously this is a very very big event, the origin of life. How did we originate? And it's you can go to depths into it. You everybody has their own theories, ethic wise or whatever, but let's just go through the scientific view in this lesson. The universe is vast. Relatively speaking, the Earth itself is almost only a speck. So, Earth for us seems to be huge, but हम देखते हैं eventually, even Earth compared to the universe, it's a very small thing. The universe is very old, almost 20 billion years old. And you have to remember the dates, all right? 20 billion years old, हमारी universe है. Huge clusters of galaxies comprise the universe. Galaxies होती universe में. Galaxies contain stars and clouds of gas and dust. Basically है क्या? Gas or dust है. Considering the size of universe, Earth is indeed a speck. The Big Bang theory attempts to explain to us the origin of universe. It talks of a single huge explosion, unimaginable in physical terms. The universe expanded and hence the temperature came down. Hydrogen and helium formed sometime later. The gases condensed under gravitation and formed the galaxies of the present day universe. So this is talking about the Big Bang theory. We might have heard about it in some time on or the other. So this basically says कि एक बड़ा सा explosion हो गया जो हम imagine नहीं कर सकते और उसकी वजह से जो universe expand हो गया. When there was expansion, the temperature came down. Hydrogen gas, helium gas बाद में बने. बाद में gases condense हो गए because gravity आ गया, fine, and eventually galaxies were formed जो हम आज देखते हैं, which are basically nothing but stars and clouds of gas and dust. In the solar system of the Milky Way galaxy, अब हर galaxy का अपना solar system, Earth was supposed to have been formed about 4.5 billion years back. Fine, Earth 4.5 billion years back, हमारा universe 20 billion years back. There was no atmosphere on early Earth. Water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, and ammonia released from molten mass covered the surface. क्या था? वाटर वेपर था, मीथेन था, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड था और अमोनिया था. ये मोल्टन मास से आया था, जो वॉल्केनो वगैरह इरप्ट हुए थे, तो मोल्टन मास से ऑल ऑफ दिस कवर्ड द अर्थ सरफेस. फाइन. अर्ली अर्थ और अभी का प्रेजेंट अर्थ, इट्स अ ह्यूज difference. Fine, which we'll be discussing subsequently आगे in the lesson. The UV rays from the sun broke up water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the lighter hydrogen escaped. Oxygen combined with ammonia and methane to form water, carbon dioxide, and others. The ozone layer was formed. As it cooled, the water vapor fell as rain to fill the depressions and form oceans. Life appeared 500 million years after the formation of Earth, that is, almost after 4 billion years back. तो 500 million साल बाद after the formation of Earth, but in terms of entirety almost 4 billion years back we have life appearing. Fine, तो यहाँ पे क्या हुआ basically all of the various processes very gradually they happen. Basically हमारे पास कुछ starting materials थे जिनसे बाद में UV rays से say for example water was broken into hydrogen oxygen. हाइड्रोजन हल्का था ऊपर चला गया escape हो गया. ऑक्सीजन अमोनिया मीथेन के साथ कंबाइन हो गया. वाटर कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड बाकी बाकी चीजें दी. ओजोन लेयर बन गया. फाइन यूवी रेडिएशन से हम प्रोटेक्ट हो गए. हम तो खैर आए नहीं थे तब. Then again, rain, water vapor cooled down, condensation, rain filled all the depressions and formed the oceans. Did life come from outer space? Some scientists believe that it came from outside. Early Greek thinkers thought units of life called spores. Greek thinkers ka theory you have to remember, spores were transferred to different planets including Earth. Panspermia is still a favorite idea for some astronomers. Say bahar se kuch chote chote particles आए which eventually resulted in the formation of life. For a long time, it was also believed that life came out of decaying and rotting matter like straw, mud, etc. This was the theory of spontaneous generation. यानी खुद से कुछ भी rotting material ले लिया, कुछ भी decaying material ले लिया, anything as a starter and it formed life. Fine. So this was again spontaneous generation theory. Louis Pasteur, by careful experimentation, Pasteur का क्या theory था? Demonstrated that life comes only from pre-existing life. Pasteur showed these terms you have to remember, these theories you have to remember, and the scientists as well. Fine. Louis Pasteur said that जब तक life होगी, life से ही life आएगी. Fine. तो कुछ panspermia जैसा या for that matter spontaneous generation जैसा कुछ नहीं होता. He showed that in pre-sterilized flasks, life did not come from killed yeast, while in another flask open to air, new living organisms arose from killed yeast. Fine. Spontaneous generation theory was dismissed once and for all. However, this did not answer how the first life form came on Earth. तो वो कह रहा था life from existing Earth, life from... How did that existing life come? Fine, that was the question. Operin of Russia and Haldane of England proposed that the first form of life could have come from pre-existing non-living organic molecules, example RNA, protein, etc. तो अब beginning कि आया कहाँ से eventually life, उसको Operin and Haldane they together they proposed कि starting में शायद कुछ non-living organic molecules होते हैं जैसे RNA, protein और उससे life आया. Fine. And they were talking about chemical evolution. हम कहाँ से आए? Organic molecules से जो basically non-living थे. This was the concept of Operin and Haldane. That is formation of diverse organic molecules from inorganic constituents. Fine. The conditions on Earth were eventually kya tha? Basically, we had high temperature, volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere, that is there's no oxygen, containing methane, ammonia, etc. ये हमारे primitive Earth के conditions है. In 1953, S.L. Miller, an American scientist, created similar conditions in a laboratory scale. He created electric discharge in a closed flask containing methane, hydrogen, ammonia, very important, and water vapor at 800 degrees Celsius. It's also already been asked in NEET exam. Line. Directly the line has been put up. I guess the scientist name was asked. तो मिलर ने अपने एक्सपेरिमेंट में क्या क्या लिया ये चीजें आई थी. फाइन. अमोनिया, मीथेन, हाइड्रोजन एंड वाटर वेपर एट 800 डिग्री सेल्सियस. उसने बोला अगर ठीक है प्रिमिटिव अर्थ पे ऐसे ऐसे कंडीशंस थे हम वही कंडीशंस क्रिएट करते हैं. लेट्स सी इफ लाइफ कैन बी क्रिएटेड. He observed formation of amino acids in similar experiments. Others observed formation of sugars, nitrogen bases, pigment, and fats. Analysis of meteorite content also revealed similar compounds, indicating that similar processes are occurring elsewhere in space. With this limited evidence, the first part of the conjectured story, that is chemical evolution, was more or less accepted. हम कहाँ पे आ रहे हैं? मॉडर्न टर्म्स में हम किस बात पे यकीन करें इज द केमिकल एवोल्यूशन. हम कहाँ से आए? केमिकल ऑर्गेनिक, पहले इनऑर्गेनिक सब्सटेंसेस ऑर्गेनिक में कन्वर्ट हुए. प्रिमिटिव अर्थ के कंडीशंस ही ऐसे थे कि उन ऑर्गेनिक मॉलिक्यूल से इवेंचुअली क्या बना? लाइफ बनी. Fine. And we have seen scientists like Miller creating conditions of the primitive earth. Say this line, very important, the one that is highlighted over here, taking such and such conditions, and he saw amino acids were formed. Similarly, other scientists coming up with other experiments, sugars bana diye, nitrogen bases, etc. etc. So this was the theory of chemical evolution. And इसमें Miller का नाम you'll have to remember. Fine. Miller in terms of the electric discharge thing he did. Fine. Next up, we have no idea about how the first self-replicating metabolic capsule of life arose. हमें नहीं पता अभी भी we still don't know कि self-replicating पहली ऐसी कौन सी life थी. Fine. The first non-cellular forms of life could have originated 3 billion years back. They would have been giant molecules. So पहला क्या ऐसा था non-cellular form. ठीक है, they could have been giant molecules. RNA protein का इन example दिया है. polysaccharides etc. These capsules reproduce their molecules perhaps. ठीक है उन्हें capsules ही ऐसे ही बोल दिया. The first cellular form of life did not possibly originate till about 2000 million years ago. These were probably single cells. All life forms were in water environment only. So start we can't say हुआ water से. Fine. This version of a biogenesis, that is the first form of life, arose slowly through evolutionary forces from non-living molecules, is accepted by majority. So majority would accept कि हमारे पास कुछ non-living molecules थे. Slowly evolutionary forces से eventually हम ने देखा कि क्या हुआ biogenesis यानी life came up. However, once formed, how the first cellular forms of life could have evolved into the complex biodiversity of today is the fascinating story that will be discussed below. अब एक हमारे पास सेल तो बन गई, सेल से आज हम इतने एडवांस्ड ऑर्गेनिजम्स कैसे बने? दिस इज डाइवर्सिटी, दिस इज वेरिएशंस, दिस इज एवोल्यूशन. यही हमें इस लेसन में पढ़ना है. तो एवोल्यूशन ऑफ लाइफ फॉर्म्स अ theory. Conventional religious literature tells us about the theory of special creation. हाँ, अगर हम religion point of view, I told you already, there can be ethical views, there can be scientific views, various views. You can go as much deep as you can go in this lesson. Fine. All right. This theory has three connotations. One that all living organisms, species or types that we see today were created as such. एक तो ये theory है कि जो हम हैं वो starting से ऐसे exist कर रहे थे. Two, that the diversity was always the same since creation and will be the same in future also. कि जितनी डाइवर्सिटी प्रेजेंट है हमेशा से इतनी डाइवर्सिटी प्रेजेंट थी हमेशा इतने एडवांस्ड ऑर्गेनिजम्स थे और आगे भी इतने रहेंगे. थ्री, दैट अर्थ इज अबाउट 4000 years old. All these ideas were strongly challenged during the 19th century based on observations made during a sea voyage in a sail ship called HMS Beagle. Even this has been asked. हाँ, round the world. Charles Darwin, वो कौन सा शिप था जिसमें डार्विन गए थे? It was HMS Beagle. Concluded that existing living forms share similarities to varying degrees not only among themselves but also with life forms that existed millions of years ago. यानी हम लोग सिमिलैरिटी दिखाते हैं, हम अपने ancestors में सिमिलैरिटी दिखाते हैं. We might have evolved from a single organism. That clearly says कि कोई special creation जैसा ऐसा theory नहीं था that we always existed as such. This means that we have evolved from a certain organism. तो ये बोला डार्विन ने on his trip in the ship HMS Beagle. Fine. Many such life forms do not exist anymore. There had been extinctions of different life forms in the years gone by, just as new forms of life arose at different periods of history of Earth. So this is what technically we can agree to. कि बहुत सारे extinct हो गए जैसे dinosaurs वगैरह और नए life forms आ रहे थे. There has been gradual evolution of life forms. Any population has built in variation in characteristics. Those characteristics which enable some to survive better in natural conditions, say climate, food, physical factors, etc., would outbreed others that are less endowed to survive under such natural conditions. Another word used is fitness of the individual or population. The fitness according to Darwin refers ultimately and only to reproductive fitness. यानी जितना आप में capacity है to produce your own type, to continue the race, उतना ज़्यादा fitness cut, mostly Darwin had it inclined towards the reproductive aspect of the fitness. Right. Another thing that you have to remember over here is कि डार्विन ने इवेंचुअली बोला क्या, इसका मकसद क्या था इतने पैराग्राफ का, कि ये हम लोग एक एंसेस्टर से इवॉल्व हुए, हम सिमिलैरिटीज इसीलिए दिखाते हैं. दैट इज हाउ द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ एवोल्यूशन केम इनटू existence. Hence, those who are better fit in an environment leave more progeny than others. जो ज़्यादा fit होंगे, जो ज़्यादा competitive होंगे, वो ज़्यादा आगे जाएंगे. The ones which can adapt, fine, they are going to live, they are going to survive. The others which cannot, जिनमें थोड़ा सा भी कमी रहेगा, they are going to lag behind. These therefore will survive more and hence are selected by nature. He called it natural selection. जिसने खुद को adapt किया, जिसमें ज़्यादा ऐसे qualities, ऐसे traits निकले जो उसको fitness की ओर ले रहे थे, तो naturally they got selected and implied it as a mechanism of evolution. Let us also remember that Alfred Wallace, another important term you have to remember, another important name, a naturalist who worked in Malay Archipelago, a group of islands, had also come to similar conclusions around the same time. In due course of time, apparently new types of organisms are recognizable. All the existing life forms share similarities and share common ancestors. However, these ancestors were present at different periods in the history of Earth, epochs, periods, and eras. The different divisions, different levels पे हम time को study करते हैं. The geological history of Earth closely relates with the biological history of Earth. A common permissible conclusion is that Earth is very old, not thousands of years as was thought earlier, but billions of years old. So this paragraph again tries to explain us the similar thing. ये भी यही बोल रहे हैं कि जो डार्विन का था एक similar approach अल्फ्रेड वॉलिस ने देखा. इसने मेले आर्शीपेलागो में देखा. Again very important to remember. तो इसने वहाँ पे क्या देखा? Again we are sharing similarities. Fine, we have come from common ancestors. Fine, and those ancestors would belong to different periods in the history of Earth. Fine. मूविंग ऑन, व्हाट आर द एविडेंसेस फॉर एवोल्यूशन? हम किस बेसिस पे कहते हैं हम इवॉल्व हुए? या डार्विन ने, से वॉलिस ने, on what basis did they conclude that there's evolution, we have evolved? Fine, that they saw the similarities. How was it possible for them to go back into times, you know, really back into billions of years ago? How could they find out? Fine, so that is when we come to evidences for evolution. Evidence that evolution of life forms has indeed taken place on Earth has come from many quarters. Fossils are remains of very important fossils. Remains of hard parts of life forms found in rocks. Rocks form sediments, and a cross section of Earth's crust indicates the arrangement of sediments one over the other during the long history of Earth. तो हम level wise देखेंगे तो ऐसे sediment one over the other layers बनाते हैं and we can actually get an idea of the कितना टाइम पीरियड हुआ है. ठीक है. Different age rock sediments contain fossils of different life forms who probably died during the formation of the particular sediment. Some of them appear similar to modern organisms. They represent extinct organisms. Example, dinosaurs. हम हमारे से similarity दिखा रहे हैं. A study of fossils in different sedimentary layers indicates the geological period in which they exist. ठीक है. ऐसा कौन सा जियोलॉजिकल टाइम था, नॉट बायोलॉजिकल टर्म्स में, जियोलॉजिकली अर्थ का कौन सा फेज था जब ये सेडिमेंट बना था और उस सेडिमेंट में कौन सा ऑर्गेनिज्म हमने देखा. द स्टडी showed that life forms varied over time and certain life forms are restricted to certain geological time spans. Hence, new forms of life have arisen at different times in the history of Earth. All this is called paleontological evidence. फाइन. अब paleontological evidence में हम क्या देखते हैं कि different different time periods में different different life forms को हमने different different sediments में देखा, fossils में देखा. ठीक है. So different life forms arose at different times in the history of Earth. Embryological support, very important. इसमें embryology में आपको एक ही term याद है, that is Haeckel. Embryological support for evolution was proposed by Ernst Haeckel based upon the observation of certain features during embryonic stage common to all vertebrates that are absent in the adults. So he said there is evolution. हम इसका एक evidence यहाँ से भी ला सकते हैं कि हमारे embryonic stages जो है वो सबके similar होते हैं. Fine, जो adults में हम नहीं देखते हैं वो हम vertebrates के embryos में देखते हैं. For example, the embryos of all vertebrates including human develop a row of vestigial gill slits. Do we require gill slits as humans? No, we don't. Do we have them? No, but they're present in the embryological stage just behind the head, but is a functional organ only in fish, and we know it, and not found in any other adult vertebrate. Hence, this proposal was disapproved on careful study performed by Carl Ernst von Baer. He noted that embryos never pass through the adult stages of other animals. Here we have a contradiction, but उससे पहले we have to understand कि जो embryological support दिया था हीकल ने, that was not absolutely wrong. Even he had some point in it, right? तो हम में वो organs नहीं है जो हमारे embryonic stage में थे, यानी हमारे ancestral characters हम repeat कर रहे हैं. Fine, and the line he said was basically ontogeny would recapitulate phylogeny. Ontogeny is the study of embryos. फिर कौन आ गया? Bear came in. वॉन बेयर. उसने बोला कि एम्ब्रियोज जो है वो कभी भी अडल्ट स्टेजेस से नहीं जाते जब यू नो बाकी एनिमल्स के केस में. Comparative anatomy and morphology show similarities and differences among organisms of today and those that existed years ago. तो हम अभी भी देखते हैं, you can just go through the diagrams etc. ठीक है. About the similarities. Such similarities can be interpreted to understand whether common ancestors were shared or not. तो हमें similarities है, उससे हम बोलते हैं कि हमारे में common ancestors है. For example, whales, bats, cheetah, and human, all mammals share similarities in the pattern of bones of four limbs. हम सब में bones जो हैं four limbs के, उनमें similarity है. Though these four limbs perform different functions in these animals, they have similar anatomical structure. Different organisms में इसका different function है, लेकिन structurally सब same. All of them have humerus, radius, ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges in their forelimbs. ये आपने skeleton system में कर रखा है 11th में. Hence, in these animals, the same structure developed along different directions due to adaptations to different needs. This is divergent evolution, and these structures are homologous. Homologous हमेशा divergent evolution दिखाते हैं. Again, something to remember. Very often these kinds of questions get asked. Fine. इसमें ये क्या कह रहा है? स्ट्रक्चरली सेम था ऑर्गन, फंक्शन डिफरेंट कर लिया। इसी सेम ऑर्गन को डिफरेंट डिफरेंट नीड्स को अडेप्ट करने के लिए डाइवर्जेंट एवोल्यूशन दिखाना पड़ा। इट वाज दिस वन ऑर्गन, one particular structure, one origin for performing different functions. It had to diverge into different directions. Other examples are vertebrate hearts or brains. In plants also, the thorn and tendrils basically क्यों homologous है? Because इनका structure same है, क्योंकि ये दोनों stems के ही modifications है। Bougainvillea and cucurbita represent homology. Homology is based on divergent evolution, whereas analogy refers to a situation exactly opposite. Wings of butterfly and of birds look alike. अब हम अगर wings देखेंगे butterfly और birds के बिल्कुल same है, लेकिन anatomically similar structures नहीं है, though they perform similar functions. Hence, analogous structures are a result of convergent evolution. जहाँ पे आप देखेंगे analogy है, जहाँ पे analogous organs है, यानी structure तो different है, यानी हम यहाँ से एक organ यहाँ से arise हुआ, एक organ यहाँ से arise हुआ, फंक्शन सेम थे, नीड सेम थी, ये कन्वर्ज हो गई। ये तो समझ आ रहा है ना, कन्वर्जिंग एरोज है। ये वाली चीज जो होती है ये डाइवर्जिंग होती है, जो एक से स्टार्ट होगी और बहुत में जाएगी। दिस वाज अबाउट होमोलॉगस एंड दिस इज अबाउट योर एनालॉगस। क्लियर? Different structures evolving for the same function and hence having similarity. Other examples of analogy are the eye of the octopus and of mammals. Examples बहुत important है, the flippers of penguins and dolphins. हमारे eyes, octopus की eyes बहुत different है. Though they perform the same function, structurally they are different. Analogy. Flippers ले लो, penguins और dolphins के है तो एक ही organ लगता है ना, ऐसे function एक ही perform करते हैं, but there is different origin. One can say that it's a similar habitat that has resulted in selection in similar adaptive features in different groups of organisms but towards the same function. तो ये एक फंक्शन था कि जिसकी ओर हमारे एक ही स्ट्रक्चरल ऑर्गन को अडेप्ट करना पड़ा। स्वीट पोटैटो विच इज रूट मॉडिफिकेशन एंड नॉर्मल पोटैटो जो हम खाते हैं इट्स अ स्टेम मॉडिफिकेशन. It's another example for analogy because both are basically tubers, both store food, but एक root है दूसरा stem है. This is analogy. तो इन्हें plant का भी साथ साथ example दिया है. In the same line of argument, similarities in proteins and genes performing a given function among diverse organisms gives clues to common ancestry. These biochemical similarities point to the same shared ancestry as structural similarities among diverse organisms. यानी अब हम microevolution की ओर जा रहे हैं, हम molecular basis पे proteins, genes देख रहे हैं. Even they will, be having be performing a similar function और बहुत सारे organisms में. So again, ancestry common है. Man has bred selected plants and animals for agriculture, horticulture, sport, or security. Man has domesticated many wild animals and crops. This intensive breeding program has created breeds that differ from other breeds, example dogs, but still are of the same group. It is argued that if within hundred of years man could create new breeds, could not nature have done the same over millions of years? Again, another thing जो हम सोच सकते हैं. Humans ने इतना ब्रीडिंग किया है, इतना हाइब्रिडाइजेशन, आर्टिफिशियल ब्रीडिंग, इस प्लांट को इसके साथ क्रॉस करते हैं, इस एनिमल को इसके साथ क्रॉस करते हैं, बेटरमेंट करेंगे, डेवलपमेंट होगा, तो क्या नेचर ये नहीं कर सकता था ओवर मिलियंस ऑफ इयर्स, राइट? अनदर इंटरेस्टिंग ऑब्जर्वेशन, एंड व्हाई डू वी बेसिकली डू दिस? हम क्यों ला रहे हैं क्रॉसेस, वेरिएशंस, रिकॉम्बिनेंट्स? व्हाई? हमारी ही लाइफ डेवलप करने के लिए, अ स्टेप फॉरवर्ड. फाइन. अनदर इंटरेस्टिंग ऑब्जर्वेशन सपोर्टिंग एवोल्यूशन बाय नेचुरल from England. In a collection of moths, बहुत important है, made in 1850s, that is before the industrialization set in, it was observed that there were more white-winged moths on trees than dark-winged or melanized moths. ठीक है, dark मतलब melanin आ गया. However, in the collection carried out from the same area, but after industrialization, there were more dark-winged moths in the same area. That is, the proportion was reversed. यहाँ पे diagrammatically beautifully it's been shown. पहले white वाले ज्यादा थे, अब क्या हो गया, अब डार्क वाले ज्यादा हो गए क्योंकि इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन से फ्यूल्स रिलीज हुए, lichens जो थे वो, it's been explained in this paragraph also. Fine. The explanation put forth for this observation was that predators will spot a moth against a contrasting background. तो camouflage basically, moth अपने आप को छुपाने की कोशिश कर रहा था. During post-industrialization period, the tree trunks became dark due to industrial smoke and soot. Do we know this? Under this condition, the white-winged moth did not survive due to predators. क्योंकि वो white थे, dark color tree trunks पे बहुत ज़्यादा prominent लग रहे थे और easily predators आ सकते थे. Dark-winged or melanized moth survived क्योंकि वो छुप रहे थे. Camouflage. Before industrialization set in, thick growth of almost white-colored lichen. Lichens are pollution indicators. White-colored lichen जो थे, they had covered the trees. In that background, the white-winged moth survived, but the dark-colored moth were picked out by predators. They will not grow in areas that are acha. Lichens, pollution indicators, just like I told you. Hence, moths that were able to camouflage themselves, that is, hide in the background, survived. This understanding is supported by the fact that in areas where industrialization did not occur, example in rural areas, the count of melanic moths was low. क्योंकि जहाँ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन नहीं हुआ था वहाँ सूट नहीं आया था, डार्कनिंग नहीं हुई थी ट्रीज की, एज अ रिजल्ट वहाँ पे मेलेनिक मॉथ्स जो है वो ज्यादा सर्वाइव ही नहीं कर पाए. वहाँ व्हाइट विंग मॉथ्स वुड हैव डन वंडर्स बिकॉज वहाँ पे व्हाइट कवर था किनका, lichens का. This showed that in a mixed population, those that can better adapt, survive, and increase in population size. Remember that no variant is completely wiped. Completely हम किसी को wipe नहीं कर सकते, मगर जिनने ज्यादा बेहतर तरीके से adapt किया, बेहतर camouflage किया, वही survive कर गए और उन्हीं का size बढ़ गया, population size. Similarly, excess use of herbicides, pesticides, etc., has only resulted in selection of the resistant varieties in a much lesser time scale. This is also true for microbes against which we employ antibiotics or drugs against eukaryotic organisms or cells. Hence, resistant organisms or cells are appearing in a time scale of months or years and not centuries. These are examples of evolution by anthropogenic action. हमारे action की वजह से. This also tells us that evolution is not a directed process in the sense of determinism. It's a stochastic process based on chance events in nature and chance mutation in the organ. तो ये chance पे भी depend करता है. हम नहीं हर एक चीज डिटरमिन कर सकते हैं इसका. ऑल्सो जब हमने फ्रीक्वेंटली यहाँ पे एग्जांपल आते हैं डीडीटी का, यू नो, इज अ केमिकल वी यूज वेरी वेरी फ्रीक्वेंटली, ठीक है, तो इससे हम पेस्ट वगैरह को किल कर रहे थे. बट इवेंचुअली क्या हुआ, जो किल हो रहे थे वो तो किल हो रहे थे, फाइन. अब जो रेजिस्टेंट स्पीशीज थी वो रह गई. रेजिस्टेंट स्पीशीज जो रह गई, उसने आगे और रेप्लिकेट किया, उसने सिर्फ रेजिस्टेंट स्पीशीज बनाए. इवेंचुअली हमारे पास सिर्फ रेजिस्टेंट स्पीशीज ही थे. सो द ड्रग्स इवन कुड नॉट वर्क बिकॉज नाउ ऑल ऑफ द स्पीशीज वर resistant. So this shows that resistant species survived while the ones that were sensitive to the drug did not survive. What is adaptive radiation? During his journey, Darwin went to Galapagos Island. Galapagos कौन गया? Darwin गया. Very good. There he observed an amazing diversity of creatures. Of particular interest, small black birds, later called Darwin's finches. हमने उनको नाम ही उसका दिया. He realized that there were many varieties of finches in the same island. एक ही island पे बहुत सारे finches के types हैं. All the varieties he conjectured evolved on the island itself. सारे island पे ही आए थे. From the original seed eating. Originally क्या थे? Seed eating features. Many of the forms with altered beaks arose, enabling them to become insectivorous and vegetarian finches. This process of evolution of different species in a given geographical area, starting from a point and literally radiating to other areas of geography, habitats, is called adaptive radiation. Darwin's finches represent one of the best examples of this phenomenon. Another example is Australian marsupials. Hmm? Australian marsupials, Darwin's finches, they are examples for अडेप्टिव रेडिएशन. एक ही जगह है, उसी एक पॉइंट से स्टार्ट हो रहे हैं और इसी जोग्राफिकल एरिया में स्प्रेड होके होके रेडिएट हो रहे हैं डिफरेंट हैबिटेट्स में, डिफरेंट अडेप्टेशंस दिखा रहे हैं और डिफरेंट डिफरेंट जो है अपने वे phenotypes में चेंज ला रहे हैं. A number of marsupials, each different from the other, evolved from an ancestral stock, but all within the Australian island continent. एक ही जगह adaptive radiation एक point से start होगा but in the same geographical area. When more than one adaptive radiation appear to have occurred in an isolated geographical area representing different habitats, one can call this convergent evolution. ठीक, हम इसको भी convergent evolution कह रहे हैं. Placental mammals in Australia also exhibit adaptive radiation in evolving into varieties of such placental mammals, each of which appear to be similar to a corresponding marsupial. Example, placental wolf and Tasmanian wolf marsupial. तो यहाँ पे यही कह रहा है कि अगर एक ही जगह एक से ज़्यादा बार ये अडेप्टिव रेडिएशन हुआ तो इवेंचुअली क्या हो रहा है, एक तो वहाँ के अपने ऑर्गेनिजम्स है वो भी सेम हैबिटेट में खुद को अडेप्ट करें, तो हम कह सकते हैं कि एक ही ऑर्गन जो है, बहुत सारे ऑर्गन्स जो है वो एक ही फंक्शन कर रहे हैं. वाई? बिकॉज द हैबिटेट इज सिमिलर, सो वी कैन कॉल इट कन्वर्जेंट एवोल्यूशन इज वेल. फाइन, एंड देव गिवन दिस एग्जाम्पल. दिस इज also been asked placental wolf and Tasmanian wolf marsupial. So they have similarities. Biological evolution. Evolution by natural selection, in a true sense, would have started when cellular forms of life with differences in metabolic capability originated on Earth. अब natural selection में biologically हम तभी बात कर सकते हैं जब हमारे पास cells होगी, कोई basic होगा. The essence of Darwinian theory about evolution is natural selection. The rate of appearance of new forms is linked to the life cycle or the lifespan. Microbes that divide fast have the ability to multiply and become millions of individuals within hours. हमें पता है, a colony of bacteria, say A, growing on a given medium has built-in variation in terms of ability to utilize a feed component. A change in the medium composition would bring out only that part of the population, say B, that can survive under the new conditions. Again, the same thing, वही survive करेंगे जो adapt कर सकते हैं. Only one thing you have to remember. In due course of time, this variant population outgrows the others and appears as new species. तो इन्हें on a very small scale, they've given कि जब हम बहुत rapidly replicating bacteria देखते हैं, उनमें भी ऐसे क्या बनते हैं? Different species ban jati hai. Why? Because of the ability of this new species to adapt. This would happen within days. For the same thing to happen in a fish or fowl would take millions of years, as lifespans of these animals are in years. तो हम lifespan पे देखते हैं bacteria जल्दी जल्दी क्या करते हैं, replicate वगैरह करते हैं, but for some other organisms it might take years. ठीक? Here we say that fitness of B is better than that of A under the new conditions. We have changed the conditions. Nature selects for fitness. One must remember that the so called fitness is based on characteristics which are inherited. Hence, there must be a genetic basis for getting selected and to evolve. हमारे genes कितने strong है, हम कितना strong progeny आगे बना सकते हैं, या हम कितना ज़्यादा continuity maintain कर सकते हैं, वो basically हम genetic basis पे जाते हैं. Another way of saying the same thing is that some organisms are better adapted to survive in an otherwise hostile environment. Adaptive ability is inherited. It has a genetic basis. Hmm? Whatever ability to adapt, it's basically inherited. हमने जो inherit किया होगा हम वही आगे जाके express करने वाले. Fitness is the end result of the ability to adapt and get selected by nature. Fine. Branching descent and natural selection are the two key concepts of Darwinian theory of evolution. Even before Darwin, a French naturalist, Lamarck, had said that evolution of life forms had occurred but driven by use and disuse of organs. So Lamarck का theory जो था based upon use and disuse of organs. उसने बोला जितना ज़्यादा हम कोई organ use करेंगे उतना वो ज़्यादा strengthen हो जाएगा, और जितना कम कोई organ use होगा तो उतना ज़्यादा वो vestigial की ओर जाता जाएगा. He gave the examples of giraffes who, in an attempt to forage leaves on tall trees, had to adapt by elongation of their necks. As they passed from this acquired character of elongated neck to succeeding generations, giraffes slowly over the years came to acquire long necks. सो बेसिकली जिराफ्स के तो लॉन्ग नेक्स नहीं थे, उनको अडेप्ट करना था, ऊंचे ऊंचे ट्रीज से उनको खाना लेना था, तो उनने क्या किया, दे इन एन अटेम्प्ट टू forage leaves they had to elongate their necks, and this trait was being passed on to the progeny. Eventually genetic effect हमने देखा कि उनका जीनोटाइप ही चेंज हो गया, which eventually resulted in the change of a phenotype. Is evolution a process or the result of a process? Hmm? The world we see, inanimate and animate, is only the success stories of evolution. When we describe the story of this world, we describe evolution as a process. On the other hand, when we describe the story of life on Earth, we treat evolution as a consequence of a process called natural selection. So whenever we talk in terms of life, we say कि evolution के बाद एक result आया हमारे पास जो natural selection जैसे process आया, and evolution was the result of that process. We're still not very clear whether to regard evolution and natural selection as processes or end result of an unknown process. It's still dilemma. It is possible that the work of Thomas Matthews on populations influenced Darwin. Natural selection is based on certain observations which are factual. For example, natural resources are limited. Populations are stable in size except for seasonal fluctuation. Members of a population vary in characteristics. In fact, no two individuals are alike. Even though they look superficially similar, most variations are inherited. The fact that theoretically population size will grow exponentially if everybody reproduces maximally, this fact can be seen in a growing bacterial population. हमने इससे पहले भी किया हुआ है कि अगर हमारे पास ideal situation होगी कि हमारे पास will be unlimited resource, so exponential rise because every organism has a tendency to reproduce maximally. So ऐसे reproduce होगा कि वो बहुत ज़्यादा maximally अपना जो रेस है उसको कंटिन्यू करेगा. बट ऑब्वियसली देयर आर बैरियर्स, वहां पे आगे लिमिटेशंस आते हैं, हमारा देयर आर कॉन्स्ट्रेंट्स लाइक यू हैव टू compete फॉर एवरीथिंग. एज अ रिजल्ट एक्सपोनेंशियल राइज होता नहीं है, सो इट्स जस्ट आइडियल. And the fact that population size in reality are limited means that there had been competition for resources. Only some survived and grew at the cost of others that could not flourish. The novelty and brilliant insight of Darwin was this: he asserted that variations which are heritable and which make resource utilization better for few which are adapted to habitat better will enable only those to reproduce and leave more progeny. Hence, for a period of time over many generations, survivors will leave more progeny and there would be a change in population characteristics and hence new forms appear to arise. So, how did this actually begin? This paragraph has got a lot of depth in it, but now that this is has to be a one shot quick revision. So basically, Darwin was trying to say that we will inherit variations. We will, obviously, there's recombination in sexual reproduction, so variations are induced in an organism in the progeny. अब वही वाला वेरिएशन वही वाला कैरेक्टर इनहेरिट होगा बिकॉज वही ऑर्गेनिज्म बचा होगा जो सर्वाइव कर सका होगा, जो अडेप्ट कर सका होगा इन अ बेटर वे. फाइन. सो दोज ओनली दोज बेटर genes in a sense you can say for layman's language better genes will be transmitted. और यही better genes जो है eventually यही spread होते जाएंगे और by the time हमें ऐसी population मिलेगी जिसमें सिर्फ better genes होंगे और ये एक completely different population होगा. So we are basically changing the characteristics of the population basically. और ये start कहाँ से हो रहा है? At the very genetic level by the inheritance of genes that are better adapted. Mechanism of evolution. What is the origin of this variation and how does speciation occur? Different species ka banna. Even though Mendel had lots of inheritable factors influencing phenotype, Darwin either ignored these observations or kept silence. So Darwin and Mendel ka thoda, they went in parallel or almost time bhi unka same tha discoveries ka. In the first decade of 20th century, Hugo de Vries. Ab de Vries will be known for mutations. You have to remember this also. Based on his work on evening primrose, brought forth the idea of mutations, large differences arising suddenly in a population. अब एक और theory आ गई, वही mutations हो रही हैं, वहाँ variations आ रही हैं हमारी genetic combination में, fine? Genetic mix में change आ रहा है, एक mutant में, तो यहाँ पे एक sudden difference आएगा in the population. He believed that it's mutation which causes evolution and not minor variations which are heritable that Darwin talked about. Hugo Dewey, what he did, exactly opposite to Darwin. He said that Darwin ने कहा कि हमारे पास heritable variation है, उनसे आ रहा है, gradually evolve हो रहे हैं. He said mutation हो रहा है and very very suddenly changes are induced. This is random and directionless. This has also been asked. Mutations are random and directionless while Darwinian variations are small and directional. हमें पता है किस डायरेक्शन में वेरिएशन होगा, जिस डायरेक्शन में बेटर अडेप्टेशन होगी. Evolution for Darwin was gradual, while Dewey believed that mutation caused speciation, and hence it is called saltation. That is single step large mutation. Saltation, according to Dewey. And in the population genetics later brought out some clarity. Our next topic is Hardy-Weinberg principle. In a given population, one can find out the frequency of occurrence of alleles of a gene or a locus. This frequency is supposed to remain fixed and even remain the same through generations. Hardy-Weinberg principle stated it using algebraic equations. So you'll simply have to remember the equation over here. So what he tried to say was about the frequency of occurrence. एक particular allele जो है किसी gene का दो alleles जो है वो किस frequency पे they are going to occur. This principle says that allele frequencies in a population are stable and is constant from generation to generation. The gene pool is basically total genes, all of their alleles in a population remain a constant. This is called genetic equilibrium. So what is genetic equilibrium? हमारा gene pool जो है, the total number of genes, the total genes, the alleles in a population, they are going to remain constant. Sum total of all the allelic frequencies is 1. वो ये कहने की कोशिश कर रहा है, the genetic equilibrium, हमारी जितनी भी allelic frequencies होंगी, the sum total will be 1. Individual frequencies, for example, can be made P, Q, etc. In diploid P and Q represent the frequencies of allele capital A and allele small a. Fine. P and Q. P will be for capital A, Q will be for small a. हमें पता है dominant recessive. It's all Mendel. The frequency of capital A individual population is simply P square क्योंकि P into P. This is simply stated in other ways. That is the probability that an allele capital A with a frequency of P appear on both the chromosomes of a diploid individual is simply the product of the probabilities, that is P square. Similarly, of small a is Q square and of capital A small a is 2PQ. Hence, this entire thing has to be equal to 1 according to geometry equilibrium. This is a binomial expansion of P plus Q whole square. Mathematics students, when frequency measured differs from expected values, the difference or direction indicates the extent of evolutionary change. Fine. तो जब भी हम एक्सपेक्टेड वैल्यू से डिफरेंट हमारा जो हमें फ्रीक्वेंसी मिलता है, दैट विल शो द एक्सटेंट ऑफ एवोल्यूशन. डिस्टर्बेंस इन जेनेटिक इक्विलिब्रियम और हार्डी वीनबर्ग इक्विलिब्रियम, दैट इज चेंज ऑफ फ्रीक्वेंसी ऑफ alleles in a population, would then be interpreted as resulting in evolution. तो अगर हमारा हार्डी वीनबर्ग इक्विलिब्रियम या हमारा जेनेटिक इक्विलिब्रियम डिस्टर्ब हो रहा है, इसका मतलब वन नहीं आ रहा सारे अलील्स का सम, जेनेटिक पूल कांस्टेंट नहीं आ रहा है, इसका मतलब कोई चेंज हुई है, यानी वी आर evolving. Five factors are known to affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. These are migration or gene flow, genetic drift, mutation, genetic recombination, and natural selection. ठीक, तो क्या क्या है? We are going to repeat. We have migration या gene flow, genetic drift, mutation, genetic recombination, and natural selection. When migration of a section of population to another place in population occurs, gene frequencies change in the original as well as in the new population. मतलब एक certain population moves to another place, and again the gene frequency is going to change. New genes or alleles are added to the new population, and these are lost from the old population. There would be a gene flow if this gene migration happens multiple times. If the same change occurs by chance, it is called genetic drift. तो वो हो गया हमारा माइग्रेशन वाला कि माइग्रेट हो गए लोग, अपने जीन्स वहाँ पे ट्रांसफर कर दिए, ओल्ड पॉपुलेशन में वो जीन्स चले गए. फाइन. एंड सिमिलरली व्हाट इज जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्ट इज अ चेंज ऑफ in frequency of an existing gene variant in the population due to random chance. Then sometimes their change in allele frequency is so different in the new sample of population that they become a different species. The original drifted population becomes founders and the effect is called founder effect. So sometimes it can also lead to speciation. इतना ज़्यादा बड़ा था चेंज कि एक नई स्पीशीज बन गई, तो ओरिजिनल पॉपुलेशन को फाउंडर बोलेंगे और इस इफेक्ट को वी कॉल इट द फाउंडर इफेक्ट. Microbial experiments show that pre-existing advantageous mutations, when selected, will result in observation of new phenotypes. Over few generations, this would result in speciation. Natural selection is a process in which heritable variations enabling better survival are unable to reproduce and leave greater number of progeny. A critical analysis makes us believe that variation due to mutation or variation due to recombination during gametogenesis or due to gene flow or genetic drift results in change frequency of genes and alleles in future generations. So basically, हो क्या रहा है genetic level पे in terms of microevolution, the frequency of genes and alleles is changing. Coupled to enhance reproductive success, natural selection makes it look like different population. Natural selection can lead to stabilization, in which more individuals acquire mean character value, directional change, wherein more individuals acquire value other than the mean character value, or disruption, more individuals acquire peripheral character value at both ends of the distribution curve. So this is basically ट्राइंग टू एक्सप्लेन कि नेचुरल सिलेक्शन करेगा क्या एक पॉपुलेशन में. ठीक है, या तो वो एक मीन जो हमारे पास कैरेक्टर होता है जो ऑलरेडी कॉमन होता है उसको और बढ़ाएगा, तो उसको स्टेबलाइजेशन बोलते हैं. डायरेक्शनल चेंज यानी हमारे पास अगर दो एक्सट्रीम्स पे दो डिफरेंट वैरायटीज है, कोई भी ऑर्गेनिजम्स में डाइवर्सिटी है, तो एक पर्टिकुलर एक्सट्रीम की ओर हम जा रहे हैं, दैट इज डायरेक्शनल इन अ सर्टेन डायरेक्शन. फाइन. तो एक वाला जो है वो ज्यादा आगे जाके इफेक्टिव रहेंगे एंड द अदर्स विल become recessive. या disruption यानी peripheral characters ज़्यादा आएंगे as compared to the mean characters. Fine. So these are the three aspects of natural selection. A brief account of evolution. About 2000, this is like a story, so you just have to hear. About 2000 million years ago, the first cellular life forms of life appeared on Earth. The mechanism of how non-cellular aggregates of giant macromolecules could evolve into cells with membranous envelope is not known. Some of these cells had the ability to release oxygen. The reaction could have been similar to the light reaction in photosynthesis, where water is split with the help of solar energy captured and channelized by appropriate light harvesting pigments. This is all, this is just a guess. Fine, people are putting forward theories, but nobody knows the actuality. Fine. Slowly, single celled organisms became multicellular life forms. By the time of 500 million years ago, invertebrates were formed and active. Jawless fish probably evolved around 350 million years ago. Seaweeds and few plants existed probably around 320 million years ago. We are told that the first organisms that invaded land were plants. They were widespread on land when animals invaded land. Fish with stout and strong fins could move on land and go back to water. This was about 350 million years ago. In 1938, a fish caught in South Africa had to be a coelacanth, which was thought to be extinct. Huh? South Africa, but these animals called lobe fins evolved into the first amphibians that lived on both land and water. So coeloconch से आए हमारे पहले amphibians. There are no specimens of these left with us. However, these were ancestors of modern day frogs and salamanders. The amphibians evolved into reptiles. They lay thick shelled eggs which do not dry up in sun, unlike those of the amphibians. Again, we only see their modern day descendants, the turtles, tortoises, and crocodiles. In the next 200 million years or so, reptiles of different shapes and sizes dominated on Earth. Giant ferns, the pteridophytes, were present, but they all fell to form coal deposits slowly. Some of these land reptiles went back into water to evolve into fish like reptiles probably 200 million years ago. Example, the ichthyosaurs. The land reptiles were, of course, the dinosaurs. The biggest of them, that is the Tyrannosaurus rex, was about 20 feet in height and had huge, fearsome dagger like teeth. About 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs suddenly disappeared from the earth. We do not know the true reason. Some say climatic changes killed them, some say most of them evolved into birds. The truth may lie between small sized reptiles of that era still exist today. So it's all about evolution, it's all about remembering things. There's nothing to explain as such. The first mammals were like shrews. This has also been asked. Their fossils are small sized. Mammals were viviparous and protected their unborn young inside the mother's body. Mammals were more intelligent. हाँ हम advancement की ओर जा रहे हैं, हम ऐसे evolve हुए कि हम advance हुए, fine, in sensing and avoiding danger at least. When reptiles came down, mammals took over this Earth. There were in America mammals resembling horse, hippo, bear, rabbit, etc. due to continental drift. अब एक और situation आई continental drift. वहां पे क्या हुआ? South America joined North America. यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? These animals were overridden by North American fauna. North American fauna strong way. Eventually जब South America, North America जुड़ गए continental drift में, तो किन लोगों ने overpower किया? The North American fauna. Due to the same continental drift, pouched animals of Australia survived because of lack of competition from any other mammals. It was all depending upon the situations. Over time, different organisms evolved in different ways. Fine, some survived, some did not, others became extinct. Lest we forget, some mammals live wholly in water. Whales, dolphins, seals, and sea cows are some examples. Evolution of horse, elephant, dog, etc. Special stories of evolution. You'll learn about these in higher classes. So, the most successful story is the evolution of man, which we have to discuss. Hmm? Origin and evolution of man. This is again something that's really memory based, and you literally have to remember these terms because there's nothing I can explain. Fine. About 15 million years ago, primates called Dryopithecus and Ramapithecus were existing. They were hairy and walked like gorillas and chimpanzees. Ramapithecus was more man-like, while Dryopithecus was more ape-like. ठीक हमारे पास apes और man आ गया. Few fossils of man-like bones have been discovered in Ethiopia and Tanzania. These revealed hominid features. Hominida is basically our family, Homo sapiens का family. Features leading to the belief that about 3 to 4 million years ago, man-like primates walked in eastern Africa. तो हमने bones से पता किया, fossils of man-like bones, we could actually reveal that man like features were present in eastern Africa. They were probably not taller than 4 feet but walked upright. 2 million years ago, Australopithecines probably lived in East African grasslands. Evidence shows that they hunted with stone weapons but essentially ate fruit. Some of the bones among the bones discovered were different. This creature was called the first human like being the hominid, and was called Homo habilis. Find the brain capacities were between 650 to 800. यहाँ पे brain capacity evolution of man में plays a very important role. They probably did not eat meat. Fossils discovered in Java. अच्छा अब Java in 1891 revealed the next stage, Homo erectus. Java stage, Homo erectus, about 1.5 million years ago. Homo erectus had a large brain, around 900 cc. Homo erectus probably ate meat. Java वाले Homo habilis, they were probably those stones वगैरह तब आए हुए थे, but they eat fruit. Homo erectus will eat meat. The Neanderthal man with a brain size of 1400 cc, अभी तक का सबसे ज़्यादा advanced, lived near East and Central Asia, ठीक है, Central or East Asia, between 100,000 to 40,000 years back. They used hides to protect their body and buried their dead. This has also been asked. Who were the ones that buried their death? कुछ ceremonial death था. ये Homo erectus में नहीं था. This was the Neanderthal man. Homo sapiens arose in Africa. Again, very important, across continents and developed into distinct races. During Ice Age between 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, modern Homo sapiens arose. Prehistoric cave art developed about 18,000 years ago. Cave art. One such cave painting by prehistoric humans can be seen at Bhimbetka rock shelter in Raisin district of Madhya Pradesh. Agriculture came around 10,000 years back and human settlements started. The rest of what happened is part of human history of growth and decline of civilizations. It's all about how man evolved, what were the various stages, what were the various species, and how did we evolve, apes, primates, common ancestry. And I think that's pretty much it for the lesson. I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and I'll be seeing you in my next one. Thank you for watching.